It starts the way most catastrophes start, quietly, with good intentions and a salary you could brag about at your cousin's wedding. You are 34 years old, working late on a Tuesday at a mid-sized consulting firm in Monterey. And the problem in front of you is nothing more sinister than a depreciation schedule that won't reconcile. Your coffee is cold, your tie is loosened. You are, by any reasonable measure, doing fine. Then your supervisor, a man named Gustavo, who always smells faintly of cedar and never meets your eyes, drops a new client folder on your desk and says the firm needs you specifically on this one. You take it home. You open it. And somewhere between the third and fourth page of shell company structures routed through Panama, the Cayman Islands, and a livestock export business in Sonora, you understand that you have just been handed something you cannot unsee. You flag it for Gustavo the next morning. Gustavo is not there. Gustavo's office has been cleaned out. You never see Gustavo again. Two men in expensive shirts are waiting at your car. They are polite in the way that people are polite when politeness is the last thing they need to be. One of them holds your daughter's school schedule, printed from somewhere, folded in thirds. He says your name, your daughter's name, your mother's address in Saltillo. He says it the way someone reads items off a shopping list. Just information, neutrally conveyed, weightless in his mouth and crushing in yours. He tells you the firm is yours now, that the client's needs are simple, and the compensation is substantial, and that the only qualification they're looking for is someone who already knows too much to walk away. You look at the schedule in his hand, you think about Gustavo, wherever Gustavo is. You get in the car. That was 6 years ago. You are now 40 years old, and you are the only person alive who can account for every dollar that moves through the financial architecture of a cartel whose annual revenue exceeds the GDP of a small nation. You did not build the system. You inherited a ruin of layered mismanagement, double entry fraud, and offshore accounts that had been opened under names of people who were already dead when the accounts were funded. You rebuilt it from the inside, not because you were asked to, but because the alternative was watching it collapse around you while your name was still attached to it. And in that world, when the money disappears, so do the people responsible for the money. The structure you've constructed over 6 years spans 4 countries formally and 11 informally. You have 47 shell entities across 3 continents, a network of compliant lawyers in 2 jurisdictions who believe they're managing legitimate real estate portfolios, and a series of layered investment vehicles so thoroughly normalized into the global financial system that a dozen legitimate pension funds hold fractional exposure to your work without knowing it. You think about that sometimes. You think about the teacher in Arizona whose retirement account is, through 6 degrees of financial separation, partially underwritten by cocaine. The danger is not what people imagine. It is not dramatic. It does not announce itself with loud men and pointed weapons, although those exist too. The real danger is the spreadsheet. It is the moment when a number that should be one thing is another, and you have to decide. In the next 4 seconds before the man across the table notices the pause, whether it is an error, a test, or a betrayal. Because in this world, all 3 look identical from the outside, and only one of them is survivable in the same way. You have made exactly 2 mistakes in 6 years. The first was minor, a misrouted transfer of $400,000 through an account in Cyprus that had been quietly flagged by an EU compliance algorithm. You caught it in 18 hours, unwound it, and rerouted it through a construction holding company in Bogotá. No one above you ever knew. The second mistake was larger. You trusted a subordinate, a young man named Ernesto, who was quick with numbers and seemed to understand the work with the specific hollow competence of someone who been sent to watch you rather than learn from you. You noticed the pattern 6 months in. He was recording transaction timestamps in a format that was meaningless for internal reporting, but would have been useful to someone building a case for a federal seizure order. You said nothing to Ernesto. You said nothing to anyone above you. You simply began routing his visibility to a parallel set of books, not false, not fraudulent, just incomplete. A shadow of the real architecture with enough internal consistency to satisfy a casual examination. 3 months later, Ernesto was gone. You do not know where. You did not ask. You have not trusted anyone since. The thing that keeps you up at night is not guilt, though guilt is present, a low-grade hum behind everything you do. It is the arithmetic of dependency. You are alive because you are necessary. You are necessary because no one else knows what you know. But necessity is not loyalty, and it is not safety. It is a transaction, renewed daily, and the terms can change without notice. You understand, with the clinical clarity of someone who has restructured 17 distressed balance sheets, that you are an asset with a depreciation curve. At some point, the system will decide it is more efficient to start over than to maintain you. And on that day, the fact that only you know where the money is will become the reason they need you gone, rather than the reason they need you present. So you have done what any competent financial professional would do. You have hedged. There is a drive, encrypted, stored in 3 physical locations you have never mentioned to anyone. On it is everything. Every account number, every beneficial owner, every nominee director, every correspondent bank relationship, every transaction hash for every major movement since you took control of the ledger. It is your insurance policy and your death warrant in the same file, because the moment it is used, everything it protects collapses. You have also made a single, quiet communication to a federal investigator. Not a confession, not a cooperation agreement, just a signal, a proof of life, establishing that you exist, that you know things, and that you have conditions. That communication sits unanswered in a channel you check every Thursday morning before you do anything else. It has been unanswered for 14 months. This morning, a man 2 levels above your direct contact told you there is a new structure being proposed, a reorganization. You would be moved laterally, your access to the primary accounts narrowed, your function redefined as supervisory rather than operational. He said it as though it were a promotion. You listened to every word he didn't say. You smiled and said you'd review the proposal. On the drive home, you recalculated every variable. The reorganization is not administrative. It is a transition plan. Someone is being trained to replace you, or has already been trained. Or the decision has already been made, and the reorganization is simply the paperwork that precedes your disappearance from the ledger, the way Gustavo disappeared from his office, quickly, cleanly, without a forwarding address. You sit with the encrypted drive in your pocket and the investigator's unanswered contact information on a phone that has never once been used for anything else. And you think about your daughter, who is 15 now and believes you work in international financial consulting, which is true in the same way that almost everything you've ever told her is true, accurate in its surface, catastrophic in its omission. You think about what it would mean to use the drive. You think about what it would mean not to. You think about Ernesto and Gustavo and the depreciation schedule that started all of this on a Tuesday night when your coffee was cold and everything was still fine. The reorganization meeting is scheduled for Friday. You have until then to decide whether you are still an asset or already a liability. And in this particular accounting system, the difference between the two has never once been a matter of performance. You open the ledger. You begin to work.